Hi, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Politics with Sherry Jacobus. Thank you for subscribing. And if you're not yet subscribed and you like what we do here, help us out and hit that subscribe button. So a happy day after Thanksgiving as well. The best part now is the leftovers. so we've been talking recently, for those of you who tune in on a regular basis, we're talking a lot about how the MAGA base out there, when you look at Trump's poll numbers, there's something off there. And so, do these Republican members of Congress in the House, well, in the Senate, but especially the House, heading into midterms, do they stick with Trump and just, you know, defend and lie about everything he does? Just try and defend him on everything, be it the National Guard being sent in the city and now being shot and killed, being sent there illegally. A judge said over a week ago that it was against the law. So Trump is using them as political pawns. So when people see that Trump is saying, "Oh, my, grocery prices are down," and yet they go to the grocery store, it's like, no, they're not, and they're still waiting for their $1.99 gas. It's just not happening. I also think that is going to backfire on Trump. Not that MAGA cares this much about it, but the fact that Trump is now, calling for the execution of those veterans who are elected members of Congress who did that video saying to the military, "Do not obey illegal orders." And Senator Mark Kelly is one of those people. Now he's going after him, having him investigated. I think it's a pretty easy concept for MAGA to understand the difference between legal and illegal orders. And I think I've said before that it's a good tell when you see what the Trump defenders and what Trump is saying when they in Fox News, when they fail to use the word illegal. These members of Congress, these senators, these veterans specifically said not to obey illegal orders. And that is something that, Fox News and the MAGA are pretending what wasn't said. So I'm thinking, is that really the best they can do, to simply lie? And granted, they're all willing to lie and they do so often, but they've got nothing else in this case. And because this is a pretty easy issue to understand, I think now that a National Guard member has been killed in D.C., there will be some MAGA that'll want to blame Democrats for everything, like, oh, these violent cities, and, calling calling for violence. Well, even though the person is here, apparently they've been affiliated with the CIA at some point, but they got their asylum under Trump. All right. So when the details come out, if they're complicated and too many of them, MAGA doesn't understand and they just believe Trump's easiest lie. But this one is pretty easy. So the National Guard should never have been in D.C. for this. They've been picking up trash and whatnot. Trump is using them as a political pawn. They do not have to obey illegal orders. And Trump is lying about what Senator Kelly and others said. So again, close elections being won or lost in the margins, this is pretty easy to understand. So in the margins, I think Trump is going to lose on this one, to the degree that MAGA care about it. But there might be just enough. But there's this new poll. This is a political piece. It was just sent to me by our friend Bruce Bartlett. And it is entitled, "How Trump's Base Could Break." And they look at some polling. They said a significant portion of 2024 Trump voters, more than a third, do not consider themselves to be MAGA Republicans, according to the Politico poll. Interesting, right? Remember, there's a number of Republicans who allegedly, reportedly in Congress are considering resigning, like Marjorie Taylor Greene, not retiring at the end of this term for the midterms, but resigning, which could give the House to Democrats, at least in a short period of time, until those seats are filled. If they are filled again by Republicans, but that could take a while, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, things could get real interesting. But we've noted that Trump's poll numbers are so bad back home. How can they continue to defend this? They are upset about how the White House is treating them, but also they've been asked to defend the indefensible and to just out and out defend and lie for Trump about things that are kind of hard to stomach. And with Trump not kissing their rears and treating them badly, look, the demolition of the East Wing, not that they care that much about it, but that was something that he very easily could have gone and gotten the rubber stamp, with Congress doing performing its oversight function, and he's just doing this stuff blatantly that's hurting them, like he doesn't care, but they do. And there's a big difference between Trump's cabinet and staff, who are all in. He picked them because a lot of them already had committed crimes or had serious ethical breaches, so they're his kind of people, right? And that means it's easy to get them to commit small crimes. Well, at that point, they need a pardon from him, as I've said before. So that how do you make sure that you get that pardon? Well, you got to do whatever he says. You have to keep committing crimes for him, for Trump, because if you don't, you're out there. I mean, they're on a limb, and he's holding the saw. But that's not the case for Republican members of Congress. Yes, they are unethical people who should all be burning in you know where, but some of them might need pardons that we don't know about. But overall, this is what differentiates them between the Trump cabinet staff and then these people in Congress. So looking at these polls, and they have to be looking at this too. This political piece is really important. So it's okay. The cracks are starting to show, according to the latest results from the Politico poll. And they note that it's going to take a lot of work for whoever picks up the MAGA mantle in 2028 to hold it together. But I'm thinking I think this is the potential for things to blow up before that. So he says, for starters, a significant portion of 2024 Trump voters, more than a third, do not consider themselves to be MAGA Republicans. And not only are they less loyal to Trump, the self-identified MAGA Republicans, the polls suggest some of them have already begun to turn on him. Okay. Non-MAGA Trump voters are much more likely to blame Trump for the state of the economy and the country, and say he has too much power, and they are pessimistic about the future. They say he has too much power. What that suggests to me is that they want their MAGA Republican members of Congress to start, step back into that role of checks and balances. Like, let's face it, they don't want one branch of government, just the executive. They don't like the executive orders. They don't like Trump just doing things like he's a king. So congratulations to those of you who took part in the No Kings protest. Our message is getting through. Our message is getting through. These are Republicans that like all this freedom, and they don't want any entity to have too much power, blah, blah, blah. So it is personality driven, in that if they love Trump, they love Trump. But they're not going to support any other Republican this way, because remember, they like to think of themselves as these freedom-loving people that broke from England because we didn't like the tyranny and the king and the authoritarianism, right? So do they only like it when it's Trump? I don't know. It looks like maybe they did before, but he over-egged his pudding. He went too far, and they don't like that now. So 47% say among those self-described MAGA voters, 47% say the current economy still belongs fully to Biden, compared to just 26% of non-MAGA Trump 24 voters. Okay. So that means a quarter of Trump voters are holding Trump accountable for the current economy. They're not still hanging in there blaming Biden. These are people who might actually be paying attention a little bit, which Trump hates. Remember, he likes stupid people. He likes the poorly educated. He said this out loud. He says smart people don't like me. It's like, duh. So if you've got some MAGA that are a little bit smart, they're paying attention. So the divide becomes even starker on areas Republicans typically don't own, like healthcare, where the White House is struggling to forge a path to extend the expiring Affordable Care Act subsidies. Right. Exactly. And that's going to be a real interesting fight coming up in January, I think, is when they're going to be addressing it. So 85% of MAGA Trump voters trust Republicans more to bring down healthcare costs, whereas just 55% of non-MAGA do, with 19% instead trusting Democrats, and 27% saying they don't know. Now, sometimes these numbers, you have to weigh them. Like people may may vote a certain way. Excuse me. They may support something when they're asked a question, but does that drive how they vote? How passionate are they about it? When Newt Gingrich was speaker, I remember he used to do this a lot. He'd say, we should go with this issue or that issue because when polled, it says X. the thing is, do people really care, or are they just expressing a preference when faced with it? Excuse me. So the non-MAGA cohort is less likely to feel Trump has taken the chance he had to change things in the economy. Excuse me, and on it goes. So again, this dovetails to what we've been talking about. Excuse me, I don't want to have to re-record this, so I'm going to keep my coughs in here. It means that they're starting to catch on. It means that Trump is losing the support of MAGA, which means he's going to be losing the support of his Republicans in Congress heading into the midterms, which means that J.D. Vance has some decisions to make. Okay? And it might mean, it just might, that there are enough Republicans or some Republicans that can start talking about the 25th Amendment getting rid of Trump. It might happen. Anyway, my throat is starting to hurt here, so I'm going to hop off here a little bit early. But I'd like this discussion to continue in the comments for those of you that have followed along, because we've been talking a lot about, what would this Republican Congress do when Trump starts losing support, because they have their voters to worry about. And they can't just obey Trump blindly, thinking, oh, he can hurt them back home. He's so popular back home. Apparently, not as popular with MAGA voters as he thinks. So let me know what you think.